I had never liked the Christmas parties at my parents' house. But this year, Grandpa called, his voice hoarse yet warm. "Come back to me for just one meal, grandson. I miss you." That single sentence was enough to make me drive my old Toyota straight from Portland to the family's villa perched on West Hills. I'm Callan Briggs, 32 years old, a chef at a small diner, earning just enough to live, free to do what I love. The house blazed with white LED lights, a Christmas tree nearly touching the ceiling adorned with crystal ornaments and golden ribbons, all expensive. Laughter echoed everywhere, champagne glasses clinking, the scent of costly perfume mingling with roasted meat and gingerbread cookies. My father, Larry Briggs, 59, chairman of Briggs City Hotels Group, was seated in the center of the crowd, a glass of red wine in hand, boasting about the new hotel soon to open in Dubai. He wore a tailored gray suit, a shiny silk tie, grinning widely, but his eyes calculating every flattering nod from the guests. To him, Christmas wasn't a holiday. It was a stage for his performance. My mother, Harlow Briggs, 57, sat beside him, her sequined dress sparkling, lips painted bright red, always wearing a perfect wax-like smile. She managed the restaurant system within Dad's hotel chain, and she managed how others saw our family. Perfect, wealthy, flawless. I sat at the corner of the long table next to Grandpa. Theodore Briggs, 80, wore an old gray sweater with a frayed collar confined to a wheelchair the family dismissed as junk. He was frail, his hair snow-white, veins bulging on his hands, yet they were still warm when he held mine under the table. He was the only one in this house who ever taught me that money can't buy peace, that a simple meal of rice and vegetables could be delicious if shared with those you love. I came here for him and only for him. The party was reaching its peak. Laughter, soft jazz music, the clink of silverware on porcelain plates. Grandpa lifted his soup spoon, his hand trembling slightly. A drop of tomato soup fell onto the pristine white tablecloth. My mother saw it and whipped around, her face twisting as if she'd witnessed something unforgivable. Her perfect smile shattered in an instant, replaced by a cold sneer. "Oh my God, Dad!" Her voice shrilled, sharp as a razor scraping glass, loud enough to silence the entire room. "You dirtied the table again. Do you have any idea how much this Italian silk tablecloth costs? Do you know how much effort I put into preparing this party?" The music still played, but no one heard it anymore. All that remained was the tiny clink of Grandpa's spoon falling onto his plate, faint yet piercingly clear. He bowed his head, his veined hands trembling violently, shrinking into his wheelchair as if trying to disappear. But Mother wasn't done. She smirked. "Well, we're used to it by now. A crippled, useless old man leeching off this family, sitting in that wheelchair all day. For years, what have you done besides defiling everything around you? It's Christmas, and you can't even maintain decorum for your children?" The room fell deathly silent, the air thick and heavy. The aunts and uncles who had been laughing and chatting moments ago now stared down at their plates, pretending to be busy with their slices of ham. No one dared look up. No one dared breathe loudly. I felt my heart pounding, hot blood rushing to my head. My hands clenched under the table until my knuckles turned white. My grandfather, the man who taught me to tie my shoes, to knot a tie, to tell fairy tales in his warm, raspy voice, was now curling up like a scolded child. His shoulders shook. I saw a tear roll down his cheek, falling onto his old pants. And no one defended him. No one. The anger inside me exploded like gasoline meeting flame. I didn't think anymore. I only knew that if I stayed silent now, I would never forgive myself. I stood up abruptly. The chair toppled behind me with a crash, echoing in the deadly silence. "Mom, apologize to him right now." My voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to draw every eye to me. My mother turned, her eyes narrowing like a cat's. "What did you say, Callan?" My father slammed his wine glass onto the table with a clink. "Sit down right now," he roared. "Are you trying to ruin my party?" I didn't sit. I stood there, fists clenched so tight my nails dug painfully into my palms. "I said you have to apologize to Grandpa. Right now." The room was pin-drop silent. I could hear the wall clock ticking like hammer blows. My father stepped toward me, his face red from wine and embarrassment in front of the relatives. You dare talk back to me in front of everyone? His voice shook with rage. Who the hell are you to lecture me? To lecture your mother on how to behave? I looked him straight in the eye. I'm his grandson, and I won't let anyone insult him, even if that person is my mother. My father lunged forward. The slap rang out like thunder. Smack! My head jerked back. My tongue went numb, the metallic taste of blood filling my throat. The room froze. I heard someone gasp softly, then whispers spreading like wildfire. My father pointed at my face, veins bulging in his neck. You ungrateful brat! You insolent fool! Who do you think you are, embarrassing me in front of the family? If you want to defend that useless old man, get out. Take the old geezer and never come back to this house. My mother stood behind him, lips pressed tight, eyes gleaming with contempt. She said nothing more, but that look said it all. To her, I was now just trash to be discarded. I stood there for a few seconds, my mind blank. My left cheek burned. Blood still lingered in my mouth. I looked around, familiar faces now avoiding my gaze. No one spoke up. No one. I turned to Grandpa. He was hanging his head, hands gripping the wheelchair armrests tightly, shoulders trembling. I knelt beside him, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. Grandpa, let's go home. He looked up at me. His old eyes clouded with tears, but he smiled. He nodded faintly. I pushed his wheelchair through the rows of elegant chairs, past curious stares, past whispers behind our backs. Each step felt like 1,000 pounds. I heard my father still shouting from behind, "Go and don't ever come back." The front door opened. The night wind rushed in, biting cold. Snow fell lightly, blanketing the path in white. I helped Grandpa into my decade-old Toyota, folded the wheelchair into the trunk, then slid into the driver's seat. I turned the key. The engine roared to life in the quiet night. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The brightly lit villa was still there, but now it was just a strange, distant light. I placed my hand on Grandpa's. His was ice cold, but gripped mine tightly. "Let's go home, Grandpa." He said nothing, just nodded slightly. The car pulled away, leaving behind the dazzling Christmas lights and a family I had just lost forever. I didn't cry, but inside my chest, something had shattered completely. I drove for 30 minutes without either of us saying a word. The snow fell thicker, blanketing the windshield. The wipers squeaked rhythmically. Grandpa sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, but I knew he saw nothing beyond the darkness and the wounds that had just been torn open again. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building on Southeast Division Street in Portland. The door opened to the lingering smell of burnt fried onions from yesterday. I flipped on every light. The yellowish fluorescent glow illuminated peeling walls, a folding table, a single bed with broken joints, and a sink full of unwashed dishes. I was so ashamed I wanted to sink into the floor. "Sit here for a moment, Grandpa." I hurried to the kitchen, opened the nearly empty fridge, and pulled out leftovers from yesterday's shift. Half a roasted chicken, some mashed potatoes, and a few steamed green beans. My hands shook as I reheated them in the rattling old microwave. I set everything on the small table, added a glass of warm water, then knelt on one knee in front of his wheelchair. "Eat, Grandpa. I'm sorry." My voice was hoarse. "I couldn't protect you. I let Mom say those things. I let Dad hit me in front of you. I'm so useless." Grandpa looked at me for a long time. His eyes were cloudy, yet a warm spark still glowed in them. He placed his bony hand on my head and stroked gently, the way he did when I was little. "It's not your fault, Callan." His voice was raspy and slow. "I'm the one who bothers everyone. Maybe I've been a burden for a long time." Those words were the final knife straight into my heart. I jerked my head up and gripped his hand tightly. "Don't say that. You're never a burden to me. Never." I fought to keep my voice from breaking. "From now on, you live with me. This apartment is small, old, and lacking, but it's our home. You're the only family I have left." He looked at me, lips trembling as if to speak, then simply nodded. A tear rolled down his cheek and fell onto the back of my hand, scalding hot. I tidied the apartment quickly. By the time I finished, it was nearly 2 a.m. I helped him into my bed, tucked the blanket carefully around him, and sat on the edge for a long while. Only when I heard his steady breathing did I dare lie down on the rickety folding cot I'd just set up. The next morning, I woke at 5 o'clock. Grandpa was still asleep. I made pumpkin soup, his favorite from long ago, brewed ginger tea, and toasted a few slices of bread with butter. When he opened his eyes, I was already in my chef's uniform, backpack slung over my shoulder. "I'm off to work, Grandpa. I'll try to come home early tonight." I kissed his forehead like a child. "If you need anything, call me right away. My number's taped to the fridge." He smiled, the first smile since that fateful Christmas night. A new life began, and it was harsher than I'd imagined. Grandpa's medicine, rent, living expenses, everything piled onto my shoulders at once. My diner salary wasn't enough for both of us. So every evening I ran to the supermarket 3 blocks away to wash dishes from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. After that, I helped in the warehouse until 12:30 a.m., sometimes nearly 1 a.m., before dragging myself back to the tiny apartment. Grandpa was already asleep. I barely had time for a cold shower, a change of clothes, and a short nap before getting up to make his breakfast. I cut every personal expense. No coffee from cafes, no weekend beer, not even cheap cigarettes. Grandpa knew everything. He saw me growing visibly thinner, the dark circles under my eyes, the fresh burns on my hands from hot dishwater. He felt guilty and often said, "Maybe I should go to a nursing home. You're suffering like this and I can't bear it." Each time I knelt beside his wheelchair and hugged him tightly. "If you leave, I'll die. You're all I have." Gradually, he stopped saying it. The little apartment slowly took on the breath of a real home. The smell of chicken soup I reheated for him every morning, the herbal tea I brewed before bedtime, the soap scent from the small laundry tub, and the apple pie I baked on weekends because he said he missed the Thanksgiving flavor of old. The old TV droned evening news. Grandpa told stories of his youth in his low, raspy voice, and I burst out laughing when he teased that I'd put too much salt in the stew. Some days he showed me how to fold napkins into swans like he did when he worked in grand hotels, and the two of us sat at the tiny table laughing until tears streamed down our faces. Those were the most peaceful months of my life. No money, no fame, no clear future. But I had him, and he had me. Until one June morning, Portland's rare sunshine glowed golden on the red maple canopies. I'd just finished cleaning up breakfast when Grandpa suddenly spoke, his voice unusually clear. "Callan, can you drive me somewhere today?" I was surprised he hadn't asked to go out in 6 months except for checkups. But I nodded immediately. "Of course, Grandpa. Anywhere." I helped him into the car, folded the wheelchair into the trunk, and slid into the driver's seat. He pointed the way without an address. "Just turn left, go straight, cross Hawthorne Bridge." We left the noisy neighborhood, drove along the Willamette River past lush green fields, then gradually entered a wealthy suburb I'd never set foot in. The roads grew wider, flanked by ancient oaks and towering stone walls. Finally, he told me to stop in front of a massive black wrought iron gate carved with intricate patterns. "Grandpa, where are we?" I asked, bewildered. He only smiled and said nothing. The gate began to open slowly, silently. 2 guards on either side stepped forward and bowed deeply to my grandfather with a reverence that stunned me. I drove down the endless white gravel path lined with blooming rose gardens like a painting. In the center of the courtyard stood a 3-tiered marble fountain, water sparkling high in the sun. And at the end of the path, what appeared before me was not a house, but a 3-story white stone chateau with red-tiled roofs, curving balconies, and breathtaking French-stained glass windows. I parked in front of the grand entrance, hands still trembling, heart pounding. Grandpa, I stammered. Whose house is this?" He looked at me, eyes shining, and whispered softly, Our home, Callan. Let's go home. As I helped Grandpa out of the car, the massive front door suddenly swung open. An elderly housekeeper, Agnes, hair in a tight bun, long black dress clutching a white handkerchief, rushed out. She dropped to one knee right in front of the wheelchair, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. "Master, you're back," she choked, voice breaking. We've been waiting for this day for so long." I pushed the wheelchair up the steps. The marble floor was ice cold beneath the wheels. Stepping into the grand foyer, I nearly stopped breathing. The ceiling soared high, a gigantic crystal chandelier sparkling like 1,000 stars. Walls paneled in dark walnut, massive oil paintings, a spiral staircase of white marble, and 2 rows of staff, at least 50 people, stood in perfect black and white uniforms on either side, bowing in unison as Grandpa passed. "Welcome home, Master." Their voices rang out together, so reverent it gave me chills. Grandpa merely raised a hand, a small gesture, and everyone straightened instantly, returning to their posts. No one dared look again. No one dared speak. I wheeled him down the endless hallway. The faint scent of pine, fresh flowers, and money swirled together, making me dizzy. I wanted to ask, to shout, to shake Grandpa and demand whether this was a dream or a nightmare, but my throat locked. I could only follow in silence, like a fool lost in a world that wasn't mine. The office door at the end of the hall closed behind us. The room was vast, polished dark wood floors, walls lined with bookshelves reaching the ceiling, filled with leather-bound files and ancient books. A massive mahogany desk held a large computer monitor and a few faded old photos. June sunlight streamed through tall windows, falling across Grandpa's face, now calm, but heavier than I'd ever seen. He motioned for me to sit in the leather chair opposite him. I sat gripping the armrests until my knuckles went white, heart still racing. He sighed, a deep 20-year exhale as if releasing a lifetime's weight. "Callan," he began, voice raspy but clear. "I need to tell you a story, one I've kept buried for a very long time." I swallowed hard, barely breathing. When I was younger, around 55, I founded a luxury furniture company called Northwest Elite Furnishings. We handcrafted wood pieces, tables, chairs, cabinets, interiors for the finest hotels, resorts, and restaurants across the Northwest. The company grew fast, Callan. Over 300 employees, factories spanning dozens of acres outside Seattle, contracts with major hotel chains from Portland to Vancouver. I stood at the very top, you understand. They called me the king of Northwest furniture. Newspapers covered me. Clients booked orders a year in advance. He paused, eyes gazing far beyond the window as if reliving those days. Then in just 3 months, everything collapsed. Orders canceled en masse. Finances drained for no apparent reason. A rival conglomerate in Seattle suddenly released collections identical to our exclusive designs. Our biggest contract was stolen. The company drowned in debt and went bankrupt. His voice grew quieter, heavy as lead. I didn't believe it was coincidence. I investigated myself, every invoice, every account, every person, and I found the truth. He looked straight into my eyes, those old eyes now sharp and chilling. Someone betrayed the company, betrayed me, and that person was Larry, your father. The blood in my veins froze. My father had betrayed his own father? Larry was my CFO from the moment the company took off. I trusted him completely. He secretly copied exclusive designs, leaked internal data, pricing, client lists to the competitor in exchange for a regional director position and a massive payout into his account. He did it all so cleanly, so perfectly. I shook my head over and over as if shaking hard enough would make it disappear. Impossible. But worse, Grandpa continued, his voice trembling for the first time. My wife, Lorraine, your grandmother, helped him. She signed off on countless money transfers without my knowledge. She legalized every transaction so the funds flowed to Larry. When it all came to light, she coldly divorced me, took what little remained, and vanished. I was left with mountains of debt, a shattered company, and then the accident. He lightly touched his motionless legs beneath the thin blanket. A truck hit head-on. Doctors said I was lucky to survive, but from then on I was paralyzed from the waist down. I couldn't walk again. I lay bedridden for a whole year, broken, thinking my life was over. No money, no family, no health. I lived in true isolation, like a real failure. I stood frozen. All my memories of Grandpa, the frail, humble old man who always smiled despite mistreatment, suddenly overlapped. Now I understood. Behind that modest exterior was a man who had built an empire, only to watch his own son betray and destroy it. My chest tightened. Tears welled up uncontrollably. Not because of the immense wealth before me, but because he had carried that pain alone, in silence, for so many years. Grandpa watched me cry without saying anything right away. He simply reached out his bony hand to wipe the tears from my cheek. The motion slow and gentle, just like when I was a tiny kid who'd fallen off my bike. "Listen to the rest, okay?" he said softly, his voice raspy but firm. "The story isn't over yet." I nodded, wiped my face with my sleeve, and tried to take deep breaths to calm down. He looked out the window where June sunlight painted golden streaks across the polished wooden floor. After the bankruptcy, I lay paralyzed in a hospital bed, then moved to a tiny rented house on the outskirts of Portland. Not a penny to my name. No visitors except a few old workers. I lived there day after day. Some nights I thought, just die and be done with it. What was the point of living when everything I'd built my whole life had been smashed by my own son? What was the point when my wife walked out, my son turned on me, and I couldn't even walk? He paused, drawing a long breath. I saw his throat tighten. But one morning I heard the garbage truck outside, workers calling to each other as they started early. I lay still and suddenly thought, people still have to work, still have to live no matter what awful things life throws at them. And here I was, a man who'd weathered a lifetime of storms, lying here waiting to collapse. I realized I still had my hands, my mind, and a pride that wouldn't let me die like a quitter. He looked straight at me, eyes blazing with a fire I'd never seen. I decided I wouldn't die a failure. I would live, and I would rebuild, even if I had to crawl on my hands. I swallowed hard. He continued, voice steady, each sentence carving into my heart. I sold everything left, my mother's few pieces of jewelry, my only gold watch, and rented a rundown garage in an abandoned industrial zone. Pitch black, leaky roof, winters that cut like knives. I sat in my wheelchair among scrap wood, calling the old loyal workers. Not one refused. They came with their own tools, and we started over with handsaws and hand planes. He gave a sad smile. The first batch was just 5 oak dining tables. I drew the designs myself on graph paper, selected every grain of wood by hand. We worked day and night. Some nights I stayed in the wheelchair until 3 a.m., hands shaking from cold, but I kept planing until the edges were perfectly smooth. The first customer was a small roadside motel. The owner saw the quality, the low price, and ordered 10 bedroom sets on the spot. The profit barely covered food, but I had a seed. I pictured it. My grandfather, half paralyzed in a freezing garage under flickering yellow neon, pencil in hand, sketching every detail with precision. My throat burned. First year, the company had 6 people. By year 3, 30. I didn't use the Briggs name, afraid Larry would find out and sabotage again. I created a new brand. I expanded quietly. Bought more factories, hired skilled craftsmen, invested in modern machines. But I still sat in the wheelchair, still wore old clothes, still ate cheese sandwiches. No employee knew I'd once been a big-shot boss. He chuckled softly, dry but full of pride. By year 10, we had 3 factories, contracts with America's largest hotel chains, hundreds of millions in annual revenue. I bought back the original Northwest Elite land, through a shell company. I rebuilt the factory 3 times larger, but never hung the old sign. I wanted Larry to never know he was sleeping on his father's money. I shook my head, unable to believe my ears. You did all this alone? Alone in a wheelchair, he corrected lightly, but never alone in spirit. I had the old workers who'd been with me since the 5 tables. They knew the truth. They kept the secret. They were my real family. He looked at me, eyes glistening. Not just the workers. I hid everything for decades, wealth, company, even my true condition. I deliberately maintained the image of a weak, poor old man. His voice turned bitter. As he spoke, something inside me twisted. Childhood memories flooded back like an old film reel spinning on its own. I remembered the rare times my parents let me visit Grandpa. He always sat in the corner of the living room, quiet, smiling kindly, slipping me a crumpled peppermint from his pocket. I used to think he was silent because he was old, because he was poor. Now I understood. He was silent because he had chosen the highest form of revenge, not with words, but with quiet success, turning pain into fuel. I remembered when I was 8, he taught me to sharpen a pencil with a small plane. He said, "Slow and steady, Callan. Don't rush or you'll cut yourself. Life's the same. Sometimes it feels broken, but if you're patient, you'll sharpen a beautiful pencil." Back then, I just laughed it off. Now I knew he was talking about himself. Memories poured in like a flood. He taught me to tie shoelaces that never came undone no matter how much I ran. He taught me to pick up trash in the park. So no one has to be ashamed because of you. He taught me to split my last sandwich with a stray dog even when my own stomach was growling. Every lesson in kindness, patience, resilience that I'd carried for 32 years. It all came from him. And he had lived through those lessons in the quietest hell imaginable. I was still kneeling on the floor, my head buried in his lap, crying until I had no breath left. Grandpa let me cry, silently stroking my hair the way he did when I was little and Dad had hit me for breaking an expensive vase. Only after a long, long time did he speak, his voice low and steady like a deep river. "I hid everything I rebuilt. For a very foolish reason, Callan. I wanted to wait, to see if Larry would ever wake up, if he would ever look back at his father, even once, and feel remorse. I thought blood would win in the end, that one day he'd kneel and apologize, or at least treat his old man with kindness." He gave a soft, dry, bitter laugh. But I waited and waited. 20 years passed. Larry only grew greedier. New hotels, new cars, new yachts, all built on the sweat and flesh I'd poured out long ago. Not only did he feel no guilt, he used that success to boast, to prove he was better than his father. He paused, then continued softly but cutting like a blade. Then one day, Larry and Harlow invited me to live with them. They said they wanted to take care of me, to make up for the years apart. I believed them. Truly believed they had changed. I thought, maybe my son finally feels regret, finally values family. So I agreed, carrying a fragile hope that the father-son bond could be mended. But within months, I saw through it all. In front of relatives or business partners, they played the dutiful children, always saying they brought Dad home to care for him. But behind closed doors, Larry treated me like a burden. Harlow's irritation grew clearer by the day. Once she even said outright, "Dad should go to a nursing home so we have more space." Right in front of me, I heard everything, remembered everything. And then I understood they hadn't changed at all. No conscience left, no family feeling left. All they truly cared about was face and money. I looked up at him. His face was calm, but his eyes were red. "I was deeply disappointed," he whispered. "I no longer had any hope. Now I only have you." He reached under the desk, a slow, difficult motion from the wheelchair. I moved to help, but he gently shook his head. He bent down, opened a small safe beneath the desk, his old hands still turning the combination lock with practiced ease. When it opened, he pulled out 2 thick, carefully bound folders and placed them in my hands. Heavy, as if he had just placed his entire life in my lap. "The first folder," he said, voice light but firm, "is my official will, fully notarized. All my assets, 1.1 billion US dollars this estate, over 100 properties from California to New York, a collection of 28 vintage cars, a yacht in Miami, a 4,000-hectare timber ranch in Montana, and full ownership of the company. Belong to you. No one else. Not Larry, not Harlow, not a single relative who ever turned their back on me. I opened the folder. Thick stacks of documents, notarized signatures, bright red seals, endless asset lists with photos. I flipped to the last page. My name. Callan Theodore Briggs, written clearly, unmistakably. My hands shook so hard the papers rustled. I was speechless. What could I say? Thank you? Refuse? I could only stare at him, eyes stinging. The second folder, he continued, voice deeper, is everything I've collected over 20 years. Money transfer receipts, emails Larry sent to competitors, forged meeting minutes signed by Lorraine, bank statements, even secret recordings I made of Larry bragging to drinking buddies that the old man dying would be perfect. I'm giving it all to you. Keep it secret if you want. Expose it if you want. I won't force you. The decision is yours. I held the second folder, heavier than the first. I opened it. Hundreds of pages, photos, sealed USB drives. Each sheet was a cut he'd made into his old wounds, then patiently waited for them to heal. He looked at me, eyes shining but voice calm. These past 6 months, you've shown me what I waited a lifetime for and never saw. You didn't need to know I was rich. You just needed me alive. You washed dishes until your skin wore thin, starved yourself to buy my medicine, stayed up all night pushing my wheelchair upstairs, never once complaining. You wiped my tears when the whole world turned away. You are the one with character, responsibility, and heart to preserve what I built. He gripped my hand tightly. His was burning hot. You deserve to inherit everything, not because of blood, but because your heart chose right. I fell silent. I couldn't cry anymore. My chest felt heavy, as if something had shattered and been rebuilt at the same time. I held the 2 folders on my lap, feeling their weight clearly. The weight of 20 years of pain, 20 years of patience, 20 years he carried alone. I knew from this moment my life would never be the same. No longer just a poor chef in Portland. No longer the son slapped in front of relatives, despised by his mother for defending his grandfather. I was now the heir to a vast fortune, the owner of a furniture empire, the one holding evidence that could send my parents to prison. I bowed my head and kissed the back of his thin hand. I won't let you down. He smiled, the most relieved smile I'd ever seen. I know you won't. Then I hugged him for a long, long time. Outside, the staff kept working, the fountain kept trickling, the world kept turning. But in this room, there were only the 2 of us. One man who had lost everything and rebuilt it from ashes, and one who had just been handed the world, along with the duty to protect it. The days that followed passed like a slow dream. I moved into the mansion, sleeping in a room so vast my footsteps echoed. The staff called me young master and bowed whenever I passed. I still wore my old t-shirts, still brewed my own coffee, still wasn't used to someone opening the car door for me. Grandpa chuckled at my awkwardness. You'll get used to it just like I did long ago. But every night I lay awake. The 2 folders sat on the desk like ticking time bombs. One held an entire fortune. The other held hell itself. I opened them again and again, memorizing every transfer amount, every line in Larry's old emails to competitors. The old man's about to die, move fast. I felt disgust, pain, and anger, a cold, silent fury that burned steadily in my chest. I knew I had to face them one last time, not because I still hoped, but because Grandpa deserved to hear them say sorry, even once in his life. I chose a Saturday afternoon. Portland was drenched in torrential rain, drops lashing the windshield as I drove to my parents' house. I wore a simple black shirt, no tie, no suit. In the trunk was a full photocopy of the evidence folder. The old villa on West Hills still blazed with lights as always, though to me now it was just a pile of bricks and stone. The maid, Maria, opened the door, eyes wide when she recognized me. She stammered, "You young Master Callan." I nodded and walked straight into the grand living room. My parents were there, Dad in a silk robe, whiskey glass in hand, watching financial news on TV. Mom at the small dining table, scrolling on her iPad, lips red as ever. They whipped around at the sound of my footsteps. The air in the room thickened instantly. Larry frowned, face flushed from drink and shock. "What the hell are you doing here?" he growled. "I told you never come back." Harlow shot to her feet, hands on hips, eyes blazing. "You ungrateful brat, crawling back now. What do you want? Money? Or to defend that crippled old man again?" I took a deep breath. My voice was strangely calm. "I came to give you one last chance." I set the black briefcase on the glass coffee table with a sharp thud that echoed in the silence. Grandpa told me everything. How Dad deceived and sold out his company. The whole truth he's known for 20 years. Harlow sneered, but I saw her mouth twitch. "You're insane. That senile old fool stuffed your head with nonsense. He's nothing but a leech, a cripple, useless. Now he's about to die and dragging you down to get revenge on your parents?" That was the final straw. Blood rushed to my head, but I kept my voice even. "Do you want to hear the last chance or not? Admit what you did. Apologize to Grandpa, I'll forgive you. And it ends here." Larry leapt up, pointing at my face, purple with rage. "You dare slander me? I built this empire with my own sweat and tears. That old man only ever destroyed things. You're a disrespectful blood traitor. Get out of my house, now!" Harlow cut in, voice shrill. "Exactly. That wheelchair freak is brainwashing my son, useless from start to finish." I couldn't hold back anymore. I opened the briefcase and slammed the thick folder onto the glass table. Papers scattered everywhere. Larry saw it, his face drained of color in an instant. He staggered back a step, whiskey sloshing from the glass, hand trembling so hard the ice clinked. What is this?" He tried to snarl, but panic leaked through. Harlow went pale too. She clung to her haughty mask, but her lips quivered, eyes darting to her husband for rescue. I didn't even look at them. My voice stayed flat. Emails Dad sent to competitors, bank statements of transfers, forged meeting minutes signed by Grandma, recordings of Dad bragging to drinking buddies that the old man dying would be perfect. Grandpa kept everything. 20 years. And now he's left the decision to me. Larry lunged, snatched the papers, and tore them to shreds. He roared, "Lies! All of it, fake! That old bastard made it up, slandering me, he tricked you!" Harlow shrieked, voice cracking, "Throw it out! Burn it all! How dare you bring this trash into my house!" I looked at them, really looked. My father, who once slapped me in front of the family, now shaking like he might collapse. My mother, who smirked when Grandpa spilled a drop of soup, now white as a corpse. Not one apology, not a shred of remorse, only fear and denial. I understood. I accepted it all. This family had shattered long ago, the day they chose money over their aging father. "I gave you one last chance. You don't want it." I turned and walked to the door. Behind me, Larry's desperate howl, "Callan, stop! You can't do this! I'm your father!" Harlow sobbed, cursing and pleading, "No, don't do this to your mother, please!" I didn't look back. The rain still poured outside. I stepped out and closed the heavy door behind me. The shouting, the crying, it faded behind the wood. I slid into the car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Rain hammered the windshield like it wanted to break through. I didn't cry. I just felt light. Strangely light. From this moment on, they were no longer my family. Only Grandpa and I remained, the only two left of a real family. I drove home through the July downpour, and for the first time in a very long while, I smiled. The next morning, the sky was still overcast. I woke at 5 a.m., as I had in my old rundown apartment. Grandpa was still asleep, his breathing steady from the large bedroom. I quietly took the original evidence folder, slipped it into a new briefcase, and kissed his forehead lightly before leaving the house. I drove to the Oregon Department of Justice headquarters in downtown Portland. Daniel Holt, My best friend from college, now a federal prosecutor, was waiting at the cafe across the street. He wore a windbreaker, hair tousled by the wind, eyes red from staying up all night reading the documents I'd sent ahead. "You sure, Callan?" he asked the moment I sat down. "Once this goes public, there's no taking it back." I slid the briefcase across the table. "Do it. Grandpa's waited 20 years. Daniel opened it, flipped through a few pages, and his face paled. He let out a low whistle. "Jesus, this isn't just fraud. This is organized crime." 3 days later, the search warrants were signed. I wasn't there when police raided the Briggs City Hotel's group headquarters. I only watched the evening news on the mansion's living room TV, sitting beside Grandpa. Familiar images, the gleaming glass tower cordoned off with yellow tape, dozens of FBI agents and state troopers in bold-lettered jackets hauling out cardboard boxes from the elevators. The camera panned to Larry, my father, for the first time without a tie, without a perfectly pressed suit. He was led to a patrol car, hands cuffed behind his back, head bowed, hair disheveled, not a word of resistance. Red ticker text: Hotel conglomerate chairman arrested for hundreds of millions in financial fraud. In just 1 week, everything collapsed faster than Grandpa's old company had decades ago. The flagship downtown Portland hotel saw mass cancellations. Major Dubai partners called to pull funding. Company stock plummeted. Employees quit en masse over unpaid wages. Harlow was summoned the next day. She arrived at the station in designer clothes and oversized sunglasses, but cameras still caught her trembling as she stepped out of the car. The media dubbed it Portland High Society's scandal of the century. Reporters dug through every inch of the Briggs family past. They interviewed old neighbors, former staff, even the maid Maria, who sobbed on camera. Mr. Theodore was the kindest man I ever knew. They treated him like garbage. I didn't watch it all. I turned off the TV and looked at Grandpa. He sat gazing out at the rose garden, silent, only squeezing my hand gently. The trial lasted 8 months. 8 months I had never lived so slowly. I attended every day, sitting in the back row in a plain black jacket. Larry never once looked at me. Harlow did, but her eyes held only a mix of hatred and pleading. Prosecutor Daniel called over 30 witnesses. Grandpa's old workers, now gray-haired, took the stand and recounted the days he sat in a freezing garage, wheelchair-bound, sketching designs with trembling hands. They brought original blueprints photocopied and sent to competitors under Larry's signature. They brought emails, bank statements, forged contracts. Every figure matched Grandpa's records perfectly. Larry hired the state's most expensive lawyers, but it was useless. Each time they attacked a witness, Daniel produced another piece of evidence, as if Grandpa's vault were bottomless. On sentencing day, the courtroom was packed with reporters. The judge, an older woman with an icy voice, read the verdict. Larry Briggs, the defendant, is convicted of large-scale commercial fraud, document forgery, tax evasion, illegal asset transfer, and intentional severe damage to a business enterprise. Sentence: 18 years imprisonment, no parole. The gavel struck. Larry stood frozen, face ashen, knees buckling. 2 officers had to hold him up. Harlow Briggs, the defendant, is convicted of complicity in concealing illicit assets and receiving property derived from crime. Sentence: 4 years suspended, 2 years house arrest, $105 million civil restitution. The court ordered seizure of the entire Briggs City Hotels group, every hotel, every account, every property in Larry's or Harlow's name. When it ended, I stood and walked silently to the door. No looking back, no tears. In the hallway, reporters swarmed like a broken hive, microphones thrust in my face, camera flashes blinding. Are you satisfied with the verdict? Will you forgive your parents? Does Mr. Theodore have a statement? I paused for a second, looked straight into the lens. I only did what was right. The rest is up to the law. Then I walked away, through the courthouse doors, through the March drizzle, past the curious crowd. I drove home. Grandpa was waiting in the living room in his wheelchair by the fireplace, holding a cup of hot tea. I knelt beside him, resting my head in his lap like when I was little. "It's done, Grandpa." He stroked my hair, voice raspy but unusually light. "It's done, grandson. Now we can sleep in peace." I buried my face in his lap, and for the first time in those long 8 months I cried, not from pain, but because finally my grandfather had received justice, even if everything was far too late. Though it hurt, I knew this had to be done, to end a chain of wrongs that had lasted years. So Grandpa wouldn't carry that pain to his grave, and so I, finally, could live with a clear conscience. Everything settled like a river after a great storm. One autumn morning, with golden leaves blanketing the courtyard, Grandpa wheeled into the dining room and placed an old, worn employee badge in front of me. "Tomorrow you start work with me." I was stunned. "Grandpa, but I only know how to hold a pan and cook. I don't know anything about wood machines or factories." He just smiled kindly, his eyes seeing straight through my fear. "Then start from the bottom. Wipe tables, plane wood, sweep the shop floor. Everyone begins at zero, Callan. What matters is that you're willing to learn." I knelt, took his hand, feeling both anxious and grateful. "I can do it, Grandpa, as long as I get to learn from you." My first day at the factory, no one knew who I was. They only saw a guy in a green work uniform and hard hat, standing amid the fragrant pine dust, carefully planing chair edges. Grandpa sat in his wheelchair in a corner of the shop, pretending to read the paper, but I knew he was watching me. I ruined 3 boards, got blisters on my hands, and my back ached. But that evening I grinned at him. "Today I planned a table leg without it being crooked." He nodded, eyes shining. "Good. Keep going tomorrow." I learned every step: selecting wood, drafting designs, assembly, PU coating, quality control. I slept in the workers' break room, ate dusty rice with the crew, listened to them tell stories of how Grandpa once ran the entire factory from his wheelchair with just a small bell. No one knew I was his grandson. They only knew me as Callan, the hardest working guy in the shop. A year later, he put me in charge of a small production line. 2 years in, I was sitting in meetings with international partners, signing $100 million contracts for designs I'd drawn myself. Employees started whispering, "Callan's just like the old boss." I only smiled. I knew I still had a long way to go before I deserved to stand beside him. But time waits for no one. In the second winter, he began to cough. At first, just dry coughs, then he tired faster, slept more. The private doctor examined him and shook his head. "His heart is very weak now. He needs complete rest." Grandpa nodded, but still sneaked out in his wheelchair to admire the roses. I rearranged everything, delegated tasks to staff, kept only critical meetings, and stayed home from morning to night. I wheeled him to the back garden, tucked a blanket around him, told him about the factory, new hires, the latest contract. He smiled, but the smiles grew weaker. Some days he dozed off mid-sentence, head resting on my shoulder. I sat motionless for hours, afraid to wake him. That spring, he became fully bedridden. I moved my bed into his room, sleeping on the sofa beside him. I cooked soup myself, fed him spoonful by spoonful, bathed him, changed diapers when needed, without a single complaint. At night, when he was in pain, I sat by the bed holding his hand until dawn. Once he woke in the middle of the night and whispered, "I'm scared, Callan. Scared to die before seeing you happy." I kissed his forehead, voice choking. "I'm already happy, Grandpa, because I have you." One morning, gentle sunlight filtered through the curtains. I woke early as usual, made pumpkin soup, his favorite. I carried the tray into his room and called softly, "Grandpa, time for breakfast." He lay there, eyes closed, the corners of his mouth slightly curved as if smiling. I set the tray down, sat on the edge of the bed, and took his hand. It was still warm, but no longer gripped mine as before. He was gone. Gently, without pain. Only absolute peace on his aged face. I held him and cried until I had no voice left. The sobs of a grown man losing the person he loved most in the world for the first time. The funeral was exactly as he had instructed, simple, unpretentious. No wreaths, no press, no brass band, just a natural pine coffin and a modest plaque. Theodore Briggs, carpenter of kindness. Over 1,000 people came to pay respects. Old workers with snow-white hair leaned on canes in long lines. Company employees wore work uniforms, not suits. Even neighbors from the old rundown apartment showed up, bringing wildflowers picked by the roadside. They spoke of him, the man who quietly funded scholarships for their children, fixed furniture for the whole block for free, smiled from his wheelchair even when insulted. I stood there in a white shirt, unable to speak. I only bowed deeply as each person hugged me and whispered, "You're just like him." 3 days after the funeral, in the company's grand boardroom, the family lawyer, Mr. Ryland, who had been with Grandpa since the tiny garage days, unsealed the will before the entire board and major shareholders. He read slowly, voice echoing, "I, Theodore Briggs, bequeath all assets, shares, operational control of the company, along with all real estate, bank accounts, vintage car collection, yacht, and ranch to my sole grandson, Callan Theodore Briggs, without conditions, without contest." The room fell silent. Then applause erupted, endless. The old workers wept. Young executives bowed their heads. No one was surprised. They had long known who truly deserved it. I stood, voice hoarse. "I accept this responsibility not for the money, but because my grandfather trusted me with it. From now on, the company will continue the path he chose, quality above all and kindness never in short supply." I returned home, to the mansion now empty except for me. I went into his room, sat beside the empty wheelchair, picked up his old sweater and breathed in its scent. Still peppermint, tobacco, and pine. I whispered into the quiet, "I won't let you down." Outside the window, roses bloomed deep red. A gentle breeze blew. And I knew, even though he was gone, he was still here, in every grain of wood I touched, in every decision I made, in every beat of my heart. My grandfather had passed, but his true legacy had only just begun. 3 months after the funeral, I still couldn't sleep through a single night. By day, I was swamped with the company, meetings, signing contracts, flying to inspect the new factory in California. But at night, the vast house fell into a silence so deep it was terrifying. I often sat in Grandpa's room until late, holding the little bell he once used to call people, giving it a soft shake. No answer. Only the wind in the garden. I knew one thing remained unfinished. One last thread still tied me to the past. Larry, the man who had once been my father, now behind bars at the federal prison in Salem, 2 hours' drive from Portland. I quietly scheduled a visit, wore a simple gray shirt, and drove the old pickup Grandpa used to haul lumber. On the way, the familiar Oregon drizzle fell. The wipers squeaked in rhythm with my heartbeat. The visiting room was cold. Bolted down metal tables, thick glass partitions, wall-mounted phones. I sat waiting, clutching a white envelope. The final letter Grandpa had given me before closing his eyes with the words, "When you're ready, give this to your father. I no longer hate him." The iron door opened. Larry walked in. I almost didn't recognize him. The once tall, impeccably suited man was now a gaunt shadow in an orange jumpsuit, hair cropped short and snow-white, eyes sunken, cheeks hollow. But the gaze was the same, full of rage and hatred when he saw me. He dropped heavily into the chair, grabbed the receiver, voice raspy from lack of cigarettes. "What are you doing here? Come to gloat? You traitor!" Before I could speak, he roared, spit flecking the glass. "You ruined my life. You and that damned old man. I'm your father. I fed you, educated you, gave you everything, and you stabbed me in the back. Happy now? I'm in prison, your mother's a living corpse, and you're rich off the family's blood." Each word cut like a knife. My chest burned, but I stayed silent, watching him spit out the last gasps of desperation. I quietly slid the white envelope through the slot beneath the glass. "Read it, Dad. Grandpa wrote this for you before he died." Larry glanced at the envelope, a flicker of hesitation crossing his face. He sneered, but his hands trembled as he took it. He tore it open, pulling out a sheet of old graph paper covered in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. I couldn't see the words, but I knew them by heart. Grandpa had read them to me once, weekly, from his sickbed. Larry, my son, I write this not to scold you. I forgave you long ago the day you chose money over your father. I only regret not teaching you that the richest man isn't the one with the most money, but the one with the most people who truly love him. You took my company, my health, the final years I lived in loneliness. But you couldn't take what I'm proudest of. Callan. He's like I was, kind, patient, and never turning his back on real family. I don't hate you. I only hope one day you understand that prison isn't iron bars. It's loneliness when no one stands beside you. If any blood tie remains, live well in the years you have left. And if you see Callan, apologize to him. He deserves to hear it from you. Your father, Theodore. Larry read. His face didn't change at first, only a twitch at the corner of his eye. Then, a few lines in, his shoulders shook. The paper slipped to the table. He covered his face with his hands. The first sob broke, not loud, just a choked gasp in his throat. Then he wept openly like a child. The sound echoed in the cold room. He pounded the table, repeating through tears, "Dad, Dad, I'm sorry, Dad." I sat there watching him cry, watching the man who had been my father reduced to a broken old man. I didn't cry. I only felt my chest lighten a little more. The buzzer ended the visit. Larry wiped his face, no longer looking at me. He stood, bowed deeply, not to me, but to the letter on the table. Then he turned and walked toward the iron door. Not a word to me. After that day, he refused all visits. Even when I tried sending letters, they were returned unopened. As for my mother, Harlow, she lived quietly in the old house, now almost fully mortgaged. She avoided neighbors, avoided sunlight. Once she sent a handwritten letter to the company, words trembling. "Callan, I'm sorry. I want to see you once." I held the letter a long time, then locked it in a drawer. No reply, not out of hate, but because meeting would only hurt us both more. I let go of the past, truly let go. I poured myself into the company, renamed the brand Briggs Furnishings. The first time the Briggs name appeared publicly after years in hiding. I expanded factories, signed deals with Asia's biggest conglomerates, placed products in hundreds of five-star hotels. The press called me the brilliant heir. But at every press conference, I said only one thing. I'm just continuing what my grandfather started. 5 years later, the company became one of the strongest furniture names in the Northwest. I still wore old t-shirts in the shop, still planned wood myself when needed. The workers called me Mr. Callan with genuine respect. And then I met her, Valentina, on an afternoon while checking progress on a new furniture prototype at the factory. I still kept the habit of walking the shop floor daily, hearing the machines, touching raw boards, watching the craftsmen. Those things reminded me where I came from. That day, Valentina stood before a new table sample, arms full of design files, so absorbed she didn't notice me approaching. When she turned, she nearly collided with me. The drawings scattered on the floor. I bent to pick them up. She did too. Our hands brushed and we both froze. "Sorry, I wasn't looking," she said, slightly flustered. I smiled. "No problem. You're from the Seattle design team, right?" She looked up, eyes lighting with recognition. But instead of the usual awkward deference, she laughed. "I thought you were a shop worker. You stand exactly like someone used to holding a plane." The simple remark warmed me in a way I hadn't felt in years. No one had seen me as just a worker in so long. No one remembered that before titles. I swept floors, sanded boards, carried heavy planks until my hands bled. We talked right there amid saws and fresh wood scent. Valentina spoke of renderings she was building. I spoke of wood moisture, grain selection, the early days when I cut myself but kept planing to get one straight edge. She listened, not because I was chairman, but because she truly cared. I don't remember how long we talked, only that when I left the shop my heart felt light, as if I'd found something perfectly right. After that, we met in the sample room, the print area, the back garden where I walked in the evenings. She never deferred to my title, never held back. Just spoke to me as two people passionate about beauty and precision. I loved that naturalness, that clarity, something I thought I'd lost forever. Love came softly, like breathing. No drama, no grand gestures. Just each day I wanted to hear her voice a little more, stand beside her a little longer, see her smile one more time. We married in the rose garden behind the house, on a gentle afternoon that felt like a blessing. No big party, no press, just flowers, sunlight, a few dozen loved ones, and the empty wheelchair at the front row, where Grandpa once sat, now only sky and memory. When Simon was born 2 years later, my life became complete in a way I never dared dream. Every afternoon I pushed the stroller through the garden, looked up at sunlight filtering through the roses Grandpa planted, and told my son about the great-grandfather he never met. A man who sat in a wheelchair but stood tall on honor and kindness. Valentina often sketched us from the side. Sometimes she whispered, "I want him to grow up like you." And every time I saw clearly that what Grandpa planted in me, patience, kindness, integrity, was being passed on in the simplest ways. I lived quietly without fanfare. Just enough strength to preserve his legacy and build my own family. Many years passed and the company grew ever larger. When Simon turned 7, I decided to do something Grandpa would surely have smiled at if he were still alive. I established the Theodore Briggs Scholarship Fund, not a grand charity spectacle, but a small practical fund for poor students from broken homes, those abandoned or wounded, yet still striving to live kindly. The announcement ceremony was held in the company's old hall. No red carpet, no flashing lights. Just natural pine chairs, roses picked from the home garden, and a large photo of Grandpa center stage, wearing his old sweater, smiling gently, eyes sparkling as if gazing at us all. I stepped to the podium, hands trembling slightly. Below were the first scholarship recipients, eyes shining with fear and hope. Grandpa's old workers, now gray-haired, Valentina and Simon in the front row, my boy waving at me. I looked up at Grandpa's photo. Strangely, I felt he was truly here. I took a deep breath and began to speak. No notes, no script, just from the heart. Today I'm not standing here as chairman of a corporation. I stand here as a grandson who was thrown out on Christmas night, who washed dishes until his hands bled to feed his grandfather, who sobbed uncontrollably when that grandfather died in his arms forever. I learned a painful truth from him. Family isn't always blood. Family is who stays when the world turns away, who wipes your tears instead of causing them. My grandfather was betrayed by his own son, humiliated by his daughter-in-law, scorned by relatives. Yet he chose kindness. He chose to silently rebuild from zero instead of loud revenge. So I say to you, the young people here, abandoned by parents, betrayed by friends, who once thought yourselves unworthy, stand up for what's right, even if it costs you loneliness, even if you must face your own kin. I did it that Christmas night, and I lost those called my parents, but I found my grandfather. I found real family. A person can lose everything, money, reputation, social standing, but if they keep their integrity, they can rebuild it all. My grandfather did, from a wheelchair with trembling hands and a broken heart. He turned pain into wood, into tables and chairs, into a company, into a legacy. And most importantly, into love for a grandson the world had turned against. Dear young friends, never let fear of failure or others' cruelty define your future. People can steal your money, your chances, even your trust. But no one can take your resilience unless you allow it. And never underestimate the silent ones. My grandfather was silent for 20 years, enduring every insult without complaint. But that silence was his greatest strength. Sometimes the strongest people are those who choose not to shout, not to retaliate, just to quietly do right. Forgiveness is necessary. I have forgiven my parents. But forgiveness doesn't mean inviting toxicity back into your life. Sometimes the best self-protection is to walk away, close the door, and let the past sleep. This scholarship isn't money. It's the chance my grandfather never had when betrayed. A chance for you to rise, not with hatred, but with integrity and kindness. I hope one day you'll stand here, tell your story, and say, I once had nothing, but I never lost my dignity. I looked at Grandpa's photo one last time, smiling at him in my heart, and I closed with the very words he said to me the night he passed. If you keep your dignity and kindness, you will never be empty-handed. The hall erupted in applause, not polite clapping, heartfelt applause, the sound of people once crushed by life but choosing to stand. I stepped down, hugged each student. They cried, I cried, and somewhere I knew Grandpa was smiling.